that know me, you may know very well that I am a bit of an electronics engineer, a bit of an electrician, and a bit of an IT support technician. In my business, I take care of multiple needs for multiple customers, whether they be IT related, electrical related, electronics related. Where this is a benefit to many is, let's say for example this laptop here gets brought in. Most IT support companies would look at it and say, okay, you need a new laptop. Right? Everyone electronics steps in, we take the laptop, bring it into our workshop, we check it out, we ascertain that the issue is with a BGA soldered graphics card processor or GPU, graphics processing unit. We basically reflow the GPU and we give the customer a functioning laptop after a couple of hours, and at least they can carry on with their everyday life as if nothing had actually happened. There you have perfectly working machine, just as an example. But today what I thought I'm going to do is I'm going to show you my various toolkits that I use out on location as well as here in my workshop to get my job done. By the way, another reason why I think it's quite beneficial that I have such a wide range of experience is, let's say for example I'm installing a UPS system for a customer server rack. I can actually do the electrical side of it, sign it off, as well as do the electronics and the IT side of this sort of installation, allowing me to do a complete all-round package for the customer, which basically makes it easier for the customer because they only have to deal with one company and we take care of everything and we guarantee everything. So let's get into the first look at my IT support first responders bag. This is basically the toolkit I use when I first go out to an IT support query or support issue. So let's get in and take a look. Now the way I do things is a little bit different, where I carry a laptop bag that has been kitted out for IT support. I'm not going to go into too much of what's in here, but in here we have a couple of USB drives, etc., with boot images and various recovery softwares. We've got PoE, a couple of cable ties, a couple of network ports, a couple of patch cables, pretty much a few generic items which may be needed. In the front of this bag over here we carry a couple of adapters, a couple of network cables, some USB drives up to 64 gigs carrying various boot images, etc. Power over Ethernet PoE, a little wireless adapter with antenna, and a little wireless adapter with a little USB extension, and just some cable ties, etc. This is just for fault diagnosing and sort of general work while I'm on location. I also carry in a separate bag a laptop computer, a external hard drive with various boot images and installation images, etc. You'll also find in there more multi-tools, knives, etc., including the ones which I carry with me all the time. You can't really see it, but let me just slide this along. We have a pen, a brush, and another paintbrush, which is just great for getting the dust and stuff out of the machines, especially in IT, as many of you will know. There's always dust issues to be found in equipment. Then in here we have this little box over here, which inside it contains some rubberized tape, insulation tape, ferrite beads, a couple of network crimp type connectors, basically in case we need to recrimp a connector or make up a cable, etc. Then over here I've got some SIM card adapters. I just put them in there in case I'm looking at something IT, such as a tablet or whatever the case may be. Some spudges, guitar picks, needle nose pliers, ranging from angled types to straight types, side cutters, a bit of heat paste which I regularly replace. I keep about 3 or 4 syringes of this stuff with me. A set of tweezers, and a little container for some screws. It's just handy for if we're busy doing something and we may need to store the screws or whatever the case may be, then at least that's on hand. Some more connectors for network crimps, etc. Then over here we have a neat little precision toolkit, not an expensive one, but I have 2 of these, one in my workshop and one in this bag, and they do the job quite well for the smaller stuff. Then over here I have a basic 23-piece ratcheting bit driver and socket set. This is quite nice for doing PC work because the socket over here can be used for bolting in the little brass standoffs, etc. It does a fantastic job. I don't use it all the time, but having it is quite nice. Then over here I have the Gerber suspension multi-tool. I quite like keeping multi-tools on me, as people that know me will know that I carry a Leatherman Surge with me wherever I go, and it comes in more handy than you may know. But this one stays in this kit over here. Then over here we have a crimp. Well, I put a couple of different tools inside this kit over here, but let's open it up and take a look. See, we have our network Cat5 crimper, which has got 6p and 8p, so I can crimp telephone and network cables. We've got our stripper. I've got one of these dodgy screwdrivers, a cable tie, some precision screwdrivers, a set of side cutters, and a needle nose pliers, and a crony tool, otherwise known as a crimp down tool or whatever the case may be, but we call them crony tools over here for working with the network connectors and telephone bits and pieces. And yeah, that's just basically, I call it the network set. It's basically a crimping set for dealing with any network cabling issues or installing network cabling, etc. I am going to be putting another one of these together pretty soon, so that I'll have two network sets. Then last but not least, we've got this little bag over here. Inside this bag is probably more used than anything else. This is a Pickwick. This specific model is the -7. This is basically my go-to screwdriver. The bit quality on these is fantastic, and if you need to select another bit, it's a matter of pulling it out, pushing it in the bottom, and it'll push your bit out the top over there, and off you go. I'll leave it on the standard star type screwdriver because I use that more than anything else in the IT field for opening computers and servers, etc. And then I also carry in this kit a Pickwick teeny turner, which is basically a smaller precision type screwdriver of the same variety. Then we just have a cheap multimeter inside here, which is just basically for testing cables or computer power supplies, etc. I am planning on investing in one of those power supply testers, but then I thought about it and I thought, nah, let me make my own, because those ones you get from China are quite dodgy anyway. So I'll make my own using an Arduino or something, but for now, multimeter can test that and a whole lot more. So I keep a multimeter, just a cheap one, in the bag over here. I don't worry about the flukes, etc. This one does the job quite nicely for what I need it for. And yeah, that is pretty much the first responders toolkit. In the workshop over here I have folders and folders of software CDs and hard drives full of stuff. Oh, before I forget, this is only the first responders toolkit. I also carry a 15.6-inch Windows/Linux dual boot laptop, which I use just occasionally. Most of the time I find I use my Samsung Galaxy. I've got the Galaxy Tab 4 10.1, and that tends to take care of most of the little issues that I may need to tackle from that sort of perspective. So yeah, this is pretty much my IT Go kit. I also have a backpack on me which has some more tools and stuff in it, but that goes with me every day, everywhere, every house, so I'm not going to include it in this review or this look at my IT tool bag. So next up, I think what we need to do now is have a look at my workshop tools. I'm going to go through them step by step so you guys can see the workshop layout. Right, over here we have my primary IT workbench. If you're looking over here, I've got a Raymond TBN3030 multimeter. Now this is just a 13.8 volt power supply. It powers some various bits and bobs. A battery rechargeable Black & Decker lithium ion screwdriver. Precision toolkit over here. This torch actually goes in my toolkit, it shouldn't be here. There's some brushes, etc., and some tweezers and stuff in this little thing over here. In the drawers below here, I will show you guys a close-up now, but basically in these drawers we have cleaning implements, cables, test cables, etc., power supply testing cables, various other bits and bobs, all within those over there. Behind the laptop you can't really see it, I've got some screw boxes. Then if we head on up, above it over there we've got our test monitor. It's actually a TV, but it doubles as a VGA monitor, HDMI monitor, whatever you want, so that's quite handy. Power supply test unit, DIY, homemade. Some compressed air and some electronics cleaner, which does a fantastic job. Then just off to the side over here we have another larger screen TV, which isn't used as often, but it's there just in case I need it for some testing or whatever. So let's go on over now to the second primary electronics workbench. Right, so for those of you who've been following me for a while, you'll know this workbench quite well. I have separated some of the RF stuff, which is on a separate workbench in a different area, but it's not used as often. So here I've just pretty much got the general electronics stuff. I've got my Raymond and Fluke meters and whatnots lying around over here. There's a laptop over here which is connected to this keyboard and to the workbench to power up projects or whatever, microphone for recording. I've got two soldering stations over there. Variable power supply, variable power supply, variable power supply, 20 meg scope, analog meters, frequency counter, digital storage oscilloscope. I think that is an audio tester, distortion analyzer, power supply, RF signal generator, vacuum tube voltmeter, 4-channel combi scope, digital and analog, RF signal generator and sweep generators over here. On the side over here there's more put away in the drawers, but I'm not going to go into all that test gear there, like I say. That's just general stuff. So this is the primary repair workbench. My reflow station, I will flash over now a photograph of it, just to show you guys. And this is where all the more in-depth electronic repairs take place, etc. Yeah, it does a pretty good job at that. Now on these shelves next to the workbench we've just got some solder, some water for the sponges on the irons, some storage boxes and bins with various components, etc. And I'm not going to go into too much detail about all of those. Some boxes here with more stored electronics components in. By the way, these drawers and parts bins are just filled with electronic components, etc., which take care of most of my electronics repair needs. Anything else we just order in as it's needed. Alright, so down here we have my workshop toolkit, starting with various sets of screwdrivers, precision screwdrivers like the ones I showed you before, but there's 3 different sets of drivers in here. So let's go through them. We've got the precision screwdrivers. We've got an angle driver, which is quite nice for if you need to get something at a bit of an angle, and then a precision screwdriver set. Not a great quality one, but it gets the job done. Inside here we have another precision screwdriver set, which is quite nice for general small electronics, etc. Then insulation tape. We've got a large needle nose pliers, side cutters, bit driver, a pro kit, cell phone toolkit down there. Nice quality star screwdriver, most used. Then over here I've got various other screwdrivers, all of them with my own hacked shrink wrap on it, just for insulation. And we've got a bit set down here with a T-driver handle, all my smaller screwdrivers, some of them insulated, some of them not, all good quality stuff. Well, some of it's medium, but it gets the job done. We've got security Torx drivers, Allen keys, a box with sockets, a socket driver, some spanners, not used too often, but great to keep a set of spanners in here. Then on the top over here we've got our standard crimper. We've got our hex type crimper, or what's used for coax crimping. Solder sucker, scissors, Stanley knife, craft knife is inside over here. There it is. The covers come off, so let me grab that carefully. Very, very handy for repairing PC board issues and stuff. A nice long flat wearer screwdriver. Small little ball peen hammer, just for when it's needed. Some tweezers, stuff like that, wire strippers, side cutters, various different pliers and other side cutters, another type of wire stripper, adjustable spanner. Pretty much that covers what's inside my office toolkit over here. I haven't shown you what's lying loose on the bench, but if you are to take a look on the bench, you'll find various little tools and bits and pieces and side cutters lying around all over the place, magnifiers, all sorts of various bits and bobs. Alright, so what we have here is the first of my electrical bags. This bag at the moment is just carrying all my not so often used testers. They are in here in case they're needed and they get carried with me to job sites, etc. But they're not always used. Sort of like not a first responders scenario. This is more of a storage. But like on the day, if I'm doing more small domestic stuff, then what I would do is I would just attach that onto my belt or my belt clip. And inside over here we have a small little electrical clamp meter with its leads. This is the Raymond TBN3030 clamp on DMM. It'll do 400 amps, plus it'll do mains measurements in the household. So it's enough for just doing basic household electrical work as a first responder. If anything bigger is needed, then I can, this is also a little first responder meter. It's a little small pocket size multimeter that I bought just, well, because I could. It's quite nice for sort of general use. Then over here I've got my Fluke T110. This is quite a nice instrument. It's a continuity and volts meter. It'll tell you about continuity. It'll also tell you phase rotation. If you're measuring DC or AC from 12 volts to 690 volts, it'll give you a reading. And as a bonus, it comes with quite a nice little storage system for the probes not to get damaged. And it comes with a little flashlight. Not that that's used too often, but nice to have nonetheless. Then what else we have in here is just another precision screwdriver set. This is my more industrial set. It actually normally goes in my normal toolkit, which is currently a bit too small and needs to be upgraded. Right, then we have a set of leads which goes, silicon leads, which goes with this guy over here. This is my well-used Fluke 336 AC-DC clamp meter. It'll do AC amps, DC amps, up to, I think it was 600 amps. This is my go-to guy in the field. Well beat up, well used, but gets the job done very nicely. Then I have a second favorite clamp meter. When I first started doing the electrical work, this is the clamp meter that I invested in. It's also a AC-DC clamp. This one will do 40 amps or 400 amps AC or 40 amps, 400 amps DC, degrees Celsius, Fahrenheit, temperature, capacitance, diode test, resistance, continuity, volts, and AC and DC, and it has a really cool backlight. So if you should be able to see that there. Yes, the Fluke does have the backlight and most of the features. Oh, and this one's also got a non-contact voltage detector. I don't really use it with the normal leads as it's more of a backup meter, but there's its K-type adapter and probe for doing temperature measurements. Then on to something I do use a fair amount when drilling. This is called a Black & Decker bullseye. It is basically a auto leveling laser. You place it on the wall and the two lasers shine out so you can level stuff up, and a stud detector. So what happens, you hold it up, it'll boot up, and then you can scan the wall and it'll tell you if there's any sort of studs or metal in the vicinity. Quite a nice little piece of kit to have. Then we have another Major Tech item. This is called the Socket C Fuse Finder. The way this guy works is you would plug this piece into the socket or onto the circuit that you in question, and you take this probe to the DB and you can scan along, and it will basically help you find which fuse or circuit breaker is connected to that circuit. Also quite a handy piece of kit and quite hard to come by here in South Africa unless you know where to look. This one's a couple of years old but still going strong. Then we have the analog. Why analog, you may ask? Just because I can. This is the Toptronic T11030 insulation continuity tester. What this is used for is for testing insulation resistance. It's also a really good voltmeter just for carrying around and just checking AC mains and stuff like that for any sort of issues. But mostly used for 250, 500 and 1000 volts insulation resistance tests, just to check that there's no issues with the installations. Then last but not least in this box over here we have just a cheap Schultz Checkers brand in South Africa battery screwdriver with all its bits and sockets, etc., just in case it's needed to drive something or whatever the case may be. Not used too often, but really cool to have. So from here we're going to now head on and take a look at one of my other two toolboxes with electrical test equipment. Before I forget, this kind of falls onto both CCTV electronics and electrical. This is my CCTV tester. I do a bit of CCTV work, but where it also comes in handy is it has a feature whereby I can use it for testing network cables. It has its little transmit end over here. You attach to one end and the other end to here, and you can actually check if the network cables are good or whatever the case may be. Also quite a nice little piece of kit to have. Not necessary, but it sure does make life a whole lot easier. So let's get into those other toolboxes. Alright, so what we have here is one of two of my toolboxes until I get something a bit bigger. Inside here we have our twist-on insulators used for joining cable, etc. Some chalk blocks, some bits, some solder. We have our Ryobi non-contact voltage probe just to check if anything is hot or not before we get stuck in and start working on live mains. Some nice little bits of equipment, useful pretty much every day. And then we also have some more solder, a little blower, etc., some insulators. And when we go into the main toolbox over here, we have a needle nose pliers, side cutter, linesman's pliers, wire stripper. I like to use one of these wire strippers over here. This one's designed specifically for electrical. It's a cheaper option, but it gets the job done. Here we got quite a nice bit driver. Not used too often, but got some Allen keys, and then you've got your actual bit driver over here with your bits stored in the back. Just nice to have in case you need something. Some insulation tape, and another one of those non-contact voltage probes sitting down here. Stubby screwdriver from Stanley with the bits in the handle, and then I also make use of these guys. I'm not going to show them all to you because I've got like 6 or 7 sizes. The insulated Tactics cheap Checkers brand insulated screwdrivers. They get the job done. They're not for any hard driving, but they're great for insulated work when you don't want to get yourself shocked or electrocuted. Then heading on inside the toolkit, we have a set of working gloves. We have a pair of scissors, some spline keys, some Allen keys somewhere in here. Actually, I think I have my Allen keys out. Just give me 1 second. Right, here we go. We've got some Allen keys. I don't know why they were out, because I was probably using for something. Some rubber gloves, some more bit sets, a socket set at the bottom. There's a whole bunch of crap in here. I'm not really going to go into all of that because it would take half the day just to review this little box. But basically, this is your primary tool case. But let's take a look at the last of my electrical, or second last of my electrical cases. And then, last of my electrical tool cases, and then we'll head on to the power tools that I make use of. Right, here we have a multi-layer box. This one just opens up like so. And inside it we have, again, various connectors, plugs, sockets, gas iron for heating, some drill bits, some wire, some gloves, and then my Wera screwdrivers. These are very good quality screwdrivers. I have a full set of those in here. I've got some other cheaper screwdrivers, some more linesman's pliers, the cheaper ones. By the way, that other toolbox that I showed you guys has 2 sets of pliers, 2 sets of cutters, etc. I fully believe that you should be carrying extras. Inside the case itself, we've got a leather tool belt, cable ties, some red and black and green cabling, some cable ties, masking tape, some gas with a gas solderer, a nice claw hammer, and various other little miscellaneous bits and pieces used in the electrical game. At the end of the day, I'd like to get all these tools into one nice decent tool bag, but that might take a bit of time. So let's go on to the last but not least, my power tools. Now, although I carry quite a large range of power tools, I don't keep them all in my electrical toolkit. Like this old Metabo drill over here is used for any dirty work or basic drilling. Anything that's not too heavy duty, it gets the job done quite nicely and with no problems. Then we've got this Ryobi impact drill. This is used more for heavy drilling, concrete, etc. Does a fantastic job of eating through concrete and is my primary heavy duty drilling machine. Then just packing stuff away as we go so that we don't get confused. Last but not least, used more than any of my other power tools, is this little kit. This is a Hitachi battery powered drill driver. You have the battery, slot it in, you can use it for driving screws, you can use it for drilling, or pretty much with a level, a magnetic level, great for mounting the charger, various screws, bits, etc. Just something that you have to have. As you can see here on the workbench, I use the Raymond TBN3030, and if you head across, we've got the Raymond TBN3030 and an old Majortech 883 analog ranging multimeter that I like to make use of. And we've got a few other little meters lying around on the workshop over here. Some are in for testing, some are for general use. If we head on over to this side over here, you'll see some of our electrical meters. A little basic meter just used for testing computer power supplies. This is my computer test bench over here. So that's all that's needed for this side. Go through some of the various electronic stroke electrical test equipment that I use on a daily basis to get my job done. Although we have covered most of my tools and bench meters, you guys have seen my reviews of the Fluke 89 Series 5 and all those meters, which I do use quite a lot on the bench, my Raymond TBN3030. But the equipment that you see laid out over here is my general fault finding electrical test equipment. Bearing in mind I do work in mixed domain, which means one minute I could be working on an electrical installation and later on I could be working on an electronics control system which controls some form of electrical circuitry or whatever the case may be. For example, in industrial control processors or programmable logic controllers, PLCs and the like, where you have low current devices, electronics equipment essentially, controlling possibly high current motors, valves and things like that. So my field takes me quite a far where not only do I need to carry a electrician's multimeter for maybe testing high currents, high voltages, etc. I do tend to find that I do make use of an electronics level multimeter such as this Raymond quite often. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go through them from that side, covering what their basic tasks are and what I use them for. Starting on this one over here, this is a Raymond, in South Africa known as Toptronic, distributed by Hellman and Titan. This is a Raymond TBN3030 AC clamp meter. Where this comes in handy, and I will be taking pictures and overlaying that on this, this meter can do basic volts DC and volts AC measurements. It can also do amps AC only, so in other words you can measure your current of your circuits using the current clamp up to a maximum of 400 amps AC. So for domestic home installations, etc., this is actually quite substantial. You can also do resistance, diode test, capacitance and frequency and continuity. So quite a nice little first responder diagnosis meter. This is the one that's actually attached to my tool bag. So when I walk in at the client, this is the meter that I kind of use first. And if something more specialized is needed, then I will take it out. But 90% of the time this guy here helps me get the job done quickly, simply, effortlessly, and yeah, it's quite a compact, nice little meter to carry with you. The Raymond TBN3030s can be picked up for around 800 Rand. This one here I actually picked up second hand for around 300 Rand. Great little meters to have. And secondly, which is actually the first clamp meter that I owned, is this Majortech, sorry, this is actually the second one because I started off with the original 720. This is now the Majortech MT723. Now where this is better than, I won't say better, but more useful than the Raymond TBN3030 is this meter can do amps AC and amps DC. The Raymond will do 400 amps, this will also do 400 amps, but it can do up to 400 amps in AC or DC current. Great for working on high current battery systems, inverters and that sort of stuff. It can also do volts, AC, DC, resistance, continuity, capacitance, diode, temperature. It's got a temperature probe, and it's got a lower 40 amp current scale, which is great for doing maybe slightly less powerful current measurements. It's a really nice meter. It also does frequency, it's auto ranging, and it has a non-contact volts detector, so quite handy for on the job. Then we have our Fluke 336 digital clamp meter. This is the workhorse basically. This guy will do 600 amps, 600 volts. Okay, this meter is rated Cat 3 600 volts, which means it's fine for electrical work around the home or basic industry. It'll do volts AC, volts DC, resistance, up to 6 kilo ohms only. So it'll only do up to a 6,000 ohm resistance measurement. Continuity, amps AC and amps DC. The way this thing is really nice is it's got something whereby you can actually measure the inrush current of, like, say, a starter motor or something like that. And also it's quite useful because you would hold a meter such as this, so you could clamp it into position, and then you've got a hold button here, and of course you can control your meter's functions from there. So yeah, all in all, a very useful meter. I do use it from time to time when I'm working on larger applications, when the need arises. Then I'm going to come back to this guy here now, but firstly I just want to point out this Fluke T110. What this basically is a voltage tester. So what happens is, this is just a handy little storage mechanism that they have so you don't damage the probes in the bag, and this is actually designed for opening some AC sockets, but it doesn't work here in South Africa. What this is actually used for is you actually have an LED indication of the voltage from 12 volts to 690 volts. It'll tell you if it's AC or DC. It'll also tell you if there's continuity, and of course it'll tell you your phase rotation. So basically for continuity test you can just touch it up, there you'll have your continuity, and Bob's your uncle. Then it also has a basic earth leakage testing system whereby you place one probe onto the earth bar, one probe onto your live bar, push these two buttons and it'll introduce enough current to hopefully trip your earth leakage. Quite nice, quite useful. It does have a nice little handy dandy torch, but it's not really the best torch in the world. But quite a nice piece of test equipment, quite nice and simple for those who are just really electricians wanting to get an indication of whether a circuit is hot or not. Then over here I have something from Major Tech. This is called a socket and C fuse finder. And you would basically, if you're working on a specific circuit, you would plug the basic transmitter into said circuit, and you would then use the probe to actually trace from the plate back to the DB which circuit breaker or fuse is actually the one affecting that circuit, so you could isolate the circuit rather quickly and turn it off and get working on it. Very handy, very useful for fault tracing as well, which isn't actually the primary task of it, but it does come in handy for that. Then over here we have the Toptronic insulation resistance tester. Analog. I like the analog meter. This one here you would basically connect to the circuit, obviously making sure that you don't have any sort of electronics connected to that circuit. And then you could select your range 250 volts, 500 volts or 1000 volts, and you could basically inject that 1000 volts, 250 or 500 volts DC into your wires and check if there's any breakages in the wires. Because you would get an actual resistance of your insulation, an insulation test resistance at that potential. So at 1000 volts, 10 mega ohms for example, installation should be good. If it goes below a certain level, say 2 mega ohms or something like that, then the installation is not good. Then you need to start checking why, and there's a potential for an accident or fire or whatever the case may be. Now some people I've seen in the electrical game go out and buy these Unity meters, such as there's a Unity UT50B. I use it on my bench just as a secondary meter. It's not the greatest, it's not a Fluke, it's not a Raymond. Or this UT201. Yes, it'll work. You'll be able to do your basic electrical testing with this. You'll be able to do your clamp testing up to 600 amps, as it says. I'm not sure if it can go that high, but it says it will measure up to 600 amps. So for domestic use, it's more than sufficient. The build quality of these is not something that I would say is fantastic. Also, I find the CAT ratings on these meters to be quite scary and not quite up to par with products such as Raymond, Fluke, etc. Like this one here is Cat 3 300 volts, Cat 2 600 volts. So immediately now, if you get an inrush surge or something like that while you're working on a DB and you happen to be measuring at the time, this thing's going to blow up and possibly hurt you. That's the biggest issue with them. Now, onto the last meter that I carry generally. It is this Raymond TBN3030. Now I've got the 829, which I've decided to leave on the bench for now, and I'm carrying this guy. This guy will do volts AC, volts DC, millivolts DC, millivolts AC, ohms, continuity, diode, capacitance, milliamps AC, amps AC, microamps AC, frequency, duty cycle, a whole bunch of nonsense. So basically where this comes in handy is when I'm working on electronic control systems, where I need to check the electronic control system that may be controlling high powered contactors, etc. Let's say if you're working on a refrigerated container or something like that, you have an electronic control computer system which basically controls the compressors and everything using contactors. That's where this comes in handy, because this allows you to diagnose the electronic level of things to see what sort of issues you may find. This is quite a large meter. Why Raymond, you may ask? And why not my Fluke 179, 177 or Fluke 89 Series 5, which is an industrial multimeter? On the volts, and bear in mind this is only on the volts between common and the volts connector, not the milliamps, microamps or amps connectors. The amps connectors are not 1000 volts Cat 3. However, the volts and common, 1000 volts Cat 4. The highest surge protection that I've seen on a multimeter here in South Africa. So I've seen some tests done on these Raymond meters, not specifically this model, but models very similar to this, lesser models in fact, where the guys have punched up to 15,000 volts into these things and only done minor damage to the meter but no damage to you as the operator, which is of course the most important thing. In fact, at 5,000 volts these meters are just laughing at it. They're just telling you there's an over voltage and that's it. 10,000 volts, they're still hanging on. 13 to 15,000 volts, they start having failures on the input diodes. But besides that, you as the user are safe. If you were to take that same 15,000 volts and punch it into something like this, there's a very, very likely risk you could get badly injured, burnt, or electrocuted. So I highly don't recommend you use one of these for very high potential or very, very high potentially dangerous voltages or circuits and stuff like that. So what you've seen here is the basics of my call-out kit when I go on site and I need to do some testing. I would start with this, and from there if I need anything else specific I would take it. This probe, yes, I do use it quite a bit as well instead of this, but I just find carrying this, it's small, it's light, it's in my bag, and it does a lot more than say the Fluke T110. But yeah, the Fluke T110 does have its advantages as well, which I'm not going to go into in this video. This video is purely about what I use, what I have, and that's pretty much asking why would I keep a CCTV tester with my ID toolkit. One of the reasons is this little section on the side over here. You can basically take your tester like this, which comes with it, plug your one end of your lead into the tester. Bearing in mind this tester is 255, and there you have it, full cable test, all cables connected 1 for 1, kit code 255. So straight away we can identify this cable. This is connected to the 255 transmitter and the cable is fine. So yeah, that's one very big reason. Hey everybody, so just as a bit of an update to this video now, this is being shot on my phone as I didn't bring the video camera in today. This has actually become my primary toolkit, pretty much housing the same gear that was in 2 of the other boxes, including most of my meters, and I'm also carrying this as a spares box and still the rotor case for all the additional meters that I don't use on every single job. So yeah, just look at this as a bit of an amendment to this video, and we'll catch you guys later.